Now, if there's one thing that I know that Square Enix Japan will always get right with its games, whether it be from Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, or indeed Kingdom Hearts, it's the music. Now, Yoko Shimomura's score for Kingdom Hearts has been heralded as legendary for many years now, and now a game to celebrate that work arrives in Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory, a tribute to the franchise's fantastic score that resembles a sister title in Final Fantasy Theatrhythm in more ways than one, but there are slight deviations from this tried and true formula that work both to its benefit and to its detriment. Hello there everyone, my name is Joesephyr, and today I'm bringing you this video review for Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory with great thanks to Square Enix, who have provided me with a copy of the game for the purposes of this review. I've always been extremely appreciative of their support, so thank you again for that. Don't forget to check out all of my social media links in the description box below, including Twitter, Twitch, Discord and Patreon. On Saturday this weekend, I will in fact be streaming Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory, which was previously listed as a mystery stream, but now I can tell you all what it is. And I always give thanks to one of my patrons on Patreon every time I release a video, and this time around that person is going to be Ichabod. So thank you very much for your support. You've been a supporter of mine since the FFTCG days, so to see you still here has been absolutely wonderful. Now, Melody of Memory is very much a game that is catered to a very, very particular kind of niche, just as Theatrhythm was before it, in that if you're not a fan of both the Kingdom Hearts franchise and rhythm games, I wouldn't expect Melody of Memory to suddenly pull you into the franchise, as while the music in it is plentiful and wonderful, more on that in a bit later, there is a level of expectation from the game that players of Melody of Memory have at least played one, if not all, of the Kingdom Hearts titles that came before it. Now, speaking of that music, any rhythm game worth its salt is held up by its library of music tracks, and on that front, Melody of Memory definitely delivers. There is a huge number of tracks in this game that is spread from Kingdom Hearts 1 all the way up to Kingdom Hearts 3 and everything in between, and a large portion of these tracks are extremely joyous to play through, whether it be for the memories of the games themselves. I've always personally loved like Tension Rising from Kingdom Hearts 2. I'm somebody that's really followed the franchise for a long time, and I was obsessed with it as a teenager and then kind of became disenfranchised with it as the story started to crawl up its own backside. But I'm sure I'll get read to filth in the comments for that particular statement. But there are like amazingly famous theme songs like Sanctuary, Don't Think Twice, and of course Simple and Clean. And there's also Disney mega classics like Part of Your World and Let It Go. There is a little bit of a disappointment in the number of the Disney tracks that feel smaller, for want of a better term, due to not having the level of impact of the movies they came from, in place of being the background level or the level background instrumentals that they were in the games. But the sheer number of tracks and the memories they carry is staggering. I only wish I didn't have to unlock them all one by one through the World Tour mode and sit through a bunch of cutscenes that I've already seen before, and I wish I could just get stuck in and go into have a massive list of tracks from the beginning like I would with a lot of other rhythm titles. Now, speaking of those cutscenes, Melody of Memory does rely on the memories of its players very heavily, as is expected from a thematic rhythm game like this one. But Kingdom Hearts is pretty well known, pretty infamous even at this point, for using the same cutscenes from the first few games over and over and over again. And the story of having Kairi kind of retell you everything that's happened across the franchise is kind of weird, because given that the game is catered to Kingdom Hearts fans, I'm pretty sure Kingdom Hearts fans will have seen these cutscenes at least 5 or 6 times, and it does make me wonder when the series will ever stop using the same opening cutscenes from Kingdom Hearts 1, if it ever will. Now, the gameplay itself is a little bit of a deviation from its sister title, Final Fantasy Theatrhythm, by transitioning from a 2D plane into a 3D one and using a camera angle that's behind the characters in a similar fashion to its source material in the Kingdom Hearts mainline titles, in an attempt to make things look action heavy. And this works largely, like with timing button presses, make it so that you jump, attack with your party members, glide, and it all looks really nice and it flows well to anyone watching the game. It took me a little getting used to kind of pressing the same button regardless of the horizontal positioning of the enemies, because normally with a rhythm game, depending on where a button prompt or an enemy is on a horizontal plane, it dictates what button you would press. But in this one, it is purely reliant on the number of enemies that come across at once. Whether you press L1, R1 or X is irrelevant, it's just the number of those buttons you have to press. So if there's one, you can press any of them. If there's two, you can press any two of them. And if three of them, you have to press all 3 of them. And the button presses feel largely satisfying on like my favourite tracks like The 13th Struggle or This Is Halloween. Although, as the difficulty increased, because I decided to go into this game on proud mode pretty quickly, or its hardest difficulty, as someone who's played quite a lot of rhythm games, I noticed that while the game feels more like Kingdom Hearts' main titles than I expected due to the way that it's presented, the fact that the button prompts are enemies can create a little bit of an issue when there's lots of them coming at once and they're all approaching at different speeds, etc. Because when you have a bunch of heartless shadows, which all look very similar, just little black blobs, all across a horizontal plane and in different positions, it became quite difficult to know exactly what button presses I needed to make before I needed to make them. And this wasn't helped by, in certain tracks, the button beats felt ever so slightly off. Which, if you're like me and use the game's visuals a lot in helping with the timing these button presses, it did cause a couple of trial and error frustrations. Now, as somebody who loved Theatrhythm, I loved the fact that like you could customize everything, like you could have a ridiculous number of different characters from across the Final Fantasy franchise, you could like give them different skills, different abilities, and there was a bit of a JRPG-ish element to that, and I really liked that, and there was a collection aspect that felt worthwhile. Now, there are items and different teams that you can use to help clear the various songs, and one of the items sort of makes it so that King Mickey appears with you and attacks in the right time, like in time with you, and it looks very visually appealing. But the level of customization that was present in Theatrhythm isn't really there in Melody of Memory. It is, like, you collect loads of little cards, you collect lots of little pictures, you do get multiple teams that you can use, like, you get the classic team of Sora, Donald and Goofy, you'll get, like, more as you play across the game, like, you'll get Roxas, Axel and Xion, the Birth by Sleep cast, things like that. You'll get a couple of different teams, but not nearly to the same extent that Theatrhythm had it, and you can't change the party members individually. You'll get guest characters show up, like Aladdin within the Agrabah missions, or Beast within the Beauty and the Beast, or Hollow Bastion from Kingdom Hearts 1, and a lot of it feels very reverent to its source material, which is great. But a lot of it feels quite superfluous, like, because you're having to use these specified teams and what the game is telling you to do, and none of them really act any differently, apart from the fact that Beast is so big that you couldn't really see half the enemies behind him. It's kind of odd, and I miss that kind of customization level that I had before. And the items are really odd, like potions, high potions and stuff like that you're supposed to use to help you progress through the harder missions if it's something you struggle with. Because the vast majority of the game's missions, which are kind of specific things you have to do within the songs you play on the World Tour mode, specifically ask you not to use items, which made me wonder why they were even there at all. Like, why would you use them if it made, like, progressing through the game, or it hindered your progress through the game? It just didn't, I didn't really understand why they were there. I did, however, really like the collection of materials, though, like the way that they integrate, like, the Moogles and the synthesis items and stuff like that, because you can make items that make more sort of music tracks that aren't necessarily in the game. Things like orchestrals and piano solos that were like performances that were made on, say, like the live orchestras and stuff like that you wouldn't necessarily hear within the game. That was something I really did appreciate. All in all, I've enjoyed my time so far with Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory, and I say that as someone who, or at least was, a massive fan of the franchise, and even after Kingdom Hearts 3 and some of the stuff that I, like, you know, enjoy sort of ripping into occasionally, it's still very much a guilty pleasure for me, and I still platinumed Kingdom Hearts 3. So being able to relive those memories that I've had since my early teens with Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 and Chain of Memories and all that stuff, and to celebrate the wonderful work of Yoko Shimomura, who is a fantastic composer, it was an absolute, like, wonderful, was a wonderful feeling. But seeing the similarities that it has with Theatrhythm and other rhythm games, and more importantly, the differences that it had and the things it felt like were missing, like the more superfluous RPG and collection elements and things like that, honestly made me just want to play Theatrhythm again, because I kind of missed that stuff that was there. So I cracked my 3DS out and I started playing that again. I would like to unlock the rest of the tracks, mostly to find all the ones that are off the beaten path through synthesis, stuff like that. But if it wasn't already obvious, this is definitely a game that is for the niche that it's intended for. So if you're a Kingdom Hearts fan, then you're going to enjoy this game. So that's going to be all for my video review of Kingdom Hearts Melody of Memory. Let me know in the comments below if it's a game that you plan on buying, or let me know if this video has helped influence your decision on whether you want to buy the game or not. If you've already bought the game, then definitely let me know what you think of it and also what your favourite tracks are from across the Kingdom Hearts franchise. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and click that bell for notifications on any future videos I might be making, whether it be video reviews like this one, videos on the Final Fantasy franchise and other Square Enix titles, or of course Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia, which is the game that I'm most well known for on YouTube. Thank you very much for joining me, and I shall see you guys in the next stream or video. Take care!